Let's go now to lesson 3. Collecting, marking, tagging, and preserving evidence. In the process of investigation, the responding team should be knowledgeable on the proper action to be done on specific kind of evidence found in the scene of the crime. The proper methods in collecting, marking, tagging, preserving evidence that must be observed are these following. So the first one is collecting physical evidence. All item that were found in the crime scene should be collected. The collecting officer should not decide whether a certain item is relevant or irrelevant. Small pieces of evidence also must have to be given importance. Those collecting them is necessary. So, the example of evidence in physical evidence is first is blood. So, na-topic natin yan kanina no sa mga crime scene. Mahalaga talaga yan, mga blood. So, blood is an important evidence in homicide, assault, robberies, or other cases where it may be spilled. So, ang blood, importance daw siya sa mga criminal assault, homicide na nangyari sa crime scene. So, important yung blood para be able to categorize them into major group like A, B, or AB and O, depending on the condition of the stain or on receipt. So there are three to categorize to how to collect blood: collection of liquid blood, collection of dry blood, or collection of wet blood on clothing. So let's go first in collection of liquid blood. So to collect liquid blood, use a clean disposable pipe or eyedropper for each sample collected. Second one, place the sample in a container, avoiding air space because air will cause the blood to dry. So if the amount of blood is minimal, collection may be best be made by placing the sample in a normal saline solution or 1 tablespoon of salt in 1 quart of distilled water. So after collecting them, refrigerate sample in saline solution as soon as possible. Do not mix areas where samples are collected. Above all, avoid containing the samples by reusing collection tools. So the second one is collection of dry blood. So on absorbent surface, bring in the entire object or cut out the stain area and bring to the laboratory. On non-absent surface, scrape up the sample and place in container, or if possible submit them entire article. The last one is if the sample is scrap from surface, also scrap a portion of the surface where no blood is present and submit in a scrape container for control in case some substance on the surface cause difficulty in test. So the last one is collection of wet blood on clothing. Do not fold the clothing as it may destroy the stain pattern. Do not package while the stain is still wet. Allow the clothing to dry in a room before packaging. The last one is do not expose to sunlight or high temperature as they may destroy factors which will be determine the blood typing. Under the collecting of physical evidence, the second one of it is hair. This may be found anywhere in the crime scene. It is often found on the clothing of the victim and suspect who have come into physical contact. In most cases, there are rarely enough samples present for positive identification of an individual. However, it can be determined if the hair is of animal or human. Whether the hair is dyed or bleached, if the hair is from the head or body, as well as the racial origin of hair. So this is example on how to collect of hair. First one is take sample of head hair from the top and the back and each side of the head. Take by combining, pulling or cutting close to it. Take at least a dozen of hair from each location. In rape cases, take 2 samples from both the victim and the suspect. The first is taken by combing and the second is by cutting and pulling. Each of these samples should be collected in separate containers and properly labeled. Identify hair carefully as to exact location found. Do not mix hair found in several locations. Place the hair in flooded paper and put it in an envelope and glass vial and seal. Do not tape the hair to an object as it will alter the hair and destroy any debris adhering to it. Next one is fingernail scraping. In cases where physical contact has been made, fingernail scraping should be obtained. Rape cases or assault cases are a good example of case where fingernails scrapings may be important. Items sometimes found under fingernails include fiber, hair, and skin, which may be typed for its blood group. So, classification to collection of fingernails. So, clean each fingernail with a clean fingernail file. Place the scraping from each finger on already labeled paper with notation of which finger it came from. Place the scraping from each finger in a separate envelope or glass vial. Fingernail scraping should be obtained from both the victim and the suspect. If the subject hand is contaminated with blood, note this on the container. So the fourth one is fiber. It is excellent as tracing evidence when clothing cross-contamination take place. This is also important evidence in robbery and hit-and-run cases. Fiber may be founded on clothing, snag on projections, and even embedded with vehicle paint. Examination of fiber determines whether it is a natural or a synthetic material. The color of dye used, it may be physically matched if the fragments was torn from clothing. Threads may be examined to determine twist, number of strands, and cloth wave. So the collection of fiber. So this is a process, or this is what like I told earlier. Treat and package fiber in the same manner as hair. Be extremely careful not to contaminate during the collection process. Collect the clothing which is considered to be the source of the fiber. Do not shake the items as this may dislodge the fiber. So the fifth one is glass. It can be an important evidence in robberies and hit-and-run cases. It may be found as a trace evidence in clothing and shoes. Glass is usually examined to determine if both the evidence sample and the known standard has the same physical properties and trace elements as imputes. In addition, examination can be made to determine from which side force was applied. Glass broken by fire shows a different pattern because the breaking is included by difference in expansion of glass. Physical match of glass from the crime scene to glass found in suspect positions is good possibility. So this is how we collect of glass. Collect from each broken glass at the crime scene. Package them individually in glass vial or envelopes. In hit-and-run cases, collect all broken glasses to ensure the possibility of physical match should fragments be found on suspect or suspect's vehicle. So, the collection of firearm. Firearm, bullet, shotgun shell, shotgun pellet, and wad, explosive residue, and gunpowder pattern can provide vital evidence and specific answer to possible question in case. So, collection of firearm. So, firearm must be handled carefully, not only as safety measure but to avoid disturbing any evidence they may provide. They must be properly marked for later identification. Never insert anything in the barrel as it may damage the identifying characteristics and dislodge material which may be inside the barrel. Pick up the weapon by the trigger guard or check red grip so as not to disturb any fingerprint. Unload but do not wipe or clean the weapon. When unloading, carefully record the location of fired, unfired, and misfired cartridges. Record the serial number description of the firearm. Firearm with no serial number should be marked with initial on the receiver or the underside of the barrel. Never use X mark or other non-individual type of marking. Do not mark the weapon on any easily removable part such as the stock or grip. Use discretion so as not to disfigure the weapon. So this is don'ts in the collection of firearms evidence. So, never submit a loaded gun to the laboratory unless it is delivered in person. Unfired cartridges may be left in the magazine of a weapon, provided the magazine is removed from the gun. A firearm with the cartridges in the chamber should never be shipped by any method, even if the weapon is not cocked or on safety. Never clean the bore, chamber, or cylinder before submitting a firearm, and never attempt to fire the gun before it examined in the laboratory. Never pick up a weapon by placing a pencil on other object in the end of the barrel. Record the serial number, make a model and caliber of the weapon, and mark it in some conscious manner that does not detract from its value before sending it to the laboratory. Marking firearms is important since duplicate serial numbers are sometimes found on different guns of the same make and general type. Do not confuse model numbers or patent numbers with serial number. Place weapon in strong cardboard or wooden box well packed to prevent shifting of guns in transit. Rifles or shotguns should not be taken apart. If blood or any other material which may pertain to an investigation is present on the gun, place a clean paper around the gun and seal it with tape to prevent movement of the gun and losses of the sample. Next is never contaminate the gun for the examination of latent fingerprint. So that is the last one that don't do in the collection of firearm. So the next one is bullet. It can provide information about the make and type of ammunition and weapon from which the bullet was fired, and whether or not it was fired from a specific weapon, provided the weapon is available for test purposes. Collection of bullet. So handle the bullet so as not to dislodge any extraneous material or damage the marking. If a bullet is lodged in wood or similar material, cut out the lesson and bring it to the laboratory. At autopsy, requires the use of hands or rubber tip forceps to minimize the possibility of damage to the bullet. Wrap each bullet separately in tissue in cotton to prevent damage and places in a container. The eighth one, cartridge case. So this can also provide vital information as to the type of weapon used, the type of ammunition, and whether or not the case was fired in the specific weapon. If a weapon is available for the fire testing. So this is how we collect. This is how to collect cartridge case. Handle cartridge cases so as not to add any scratches or marks. Wrap each one separately to prevent damage. Be sure to note a specific location in which each was founded. So the ninth one is seminal stain. So it is often but not always found on clothing, blankets, sheets. It is also biological evidence like blood. It must be collected properly to maintain its integrity. This is how to collect a seminal stain. Allow any stain to air dry, wrap in paper, and package evidence in paper bags. Do not use plastic bags. So, for sex offense cases, the victim should always be examined by a sexual assault evidence collection kit. It is used to collect evidence from the victim. It is very important that the instructions on the kit be followed with care and order to gain the greatest benefit from the collected evidence. So, label all garments such as undershorts, panties, or other exhibits and package each garment separately. If damp, allow fabric to dry completely before packaging. Handle fabrics as little as possible. So the next topic of this lesson is marking physical evidence. So as evidence is collected, it is individually marked with initial of investigator. And the marking tool depends upon the nature of the evidence. If it is a hard object such as metals, the initials are scratched or engraved by the use of sharp pointed steel called stylus. This is the general rules in marking tools or objects as physical evidence. First is mark with initial of recovering officer. Never use X. Record any serial number if applicable, and other distinctive mark. Mark the object without damage. Always mark the container in which the object is placed, even if object itself is already marked. When tags are used, make a corresponding entry in the tag and attach it securely to the object. So, marking of firearms related evidence. So, these are the 5 sample of it. First is revolver. It must be marked separately on the barrel, frame, butt, cylinder, and stock. Tape should also be put around the bore and the firearm of the gun with the signature of the investigator. Second one is pistol. It must be marked on the barrel, frame, butt, magazine, and stock. Tape must also be put around the gun with signature of to avoid changing the parts of the gun that may affect the result of laboratory examination. The third one is rifle. It should be marked on the barrel, frame, magazine, bolt, or slide. All magazine and accessories should also be marked. The fourth one is fired empty shell and misfired cartridges. It must be marked near the mouth of fire empty shell, not on the body or peripheral surface or base. The last one is bullet, slugs, balls, and pellets. A bullet or slug can be marked on the ogive or nose, as well as in the base, not on the body or bearing surface. All evidence could be marked due to their physical nature. They should be properly stored, logged, and labeled. Marking of evidence is most likely applicable only to any object or tools found in a crime scene. Next slide is tagging evidence. All evidence which be their name could not be marked on each surface, such as blood, hairs, fibers, and the like, are properly stored in an appropriate container. After that, the container is put with a tag. Tagging of physical evidence is being done with the use of card where the initial of the investigator, date and time of collection, his specific case, and other information are written. Next slide. The preserving physical evidence. Perishable material should be preserved along the way, or the preservation is in order to reach the court in the same physical condition as when they were collected from the crime scene. This is the work of a laboratory technician, or what we call SOCO team. So these are the preserving physical evidence. So first one is preservation of tool marks. So whenever possible, submit the whole object containing tool mark to the laboratory instead of just removing the area of contaminating the mark. If this is not possible, carefully photograph and sketch the area containing the mark. Although this photograph will not be sufficient to allow the laboratory to perform a tool mark comparison with the tool. It will assist the laboratory to determine how the mark was made, so that test mark can be more easily made. Second is cast of tools mark can be made by any person who has had considerable experience in this work. Poor casts are useless for comparison purposes, and some marks will be damaged if improper methods are used. Pack the object containing tool marks so that no So no alteration or damage will occur during shipment. Small objects should be wrapped with clean paper and placed in envelope or boxes, while important areas on large objects can be protected with paper. Whole large object can be packaged in cartons or crates if not delivered in person. The second one is preservation of controlled substance and medical preparations. So, each sample of material recovered should be placed in a paper container, which can be sealed and marked. Be sure properly seal as loose material, particularly in the case of marijuana, can leak and spill. Preservation of question documents. Under no circumstances should either the question documents or the exemplars be marked, defaced, or altered. No new folds should be made, nor should marks or no notes be placed on such material. Personal marks for identification purposes should be made as small as possible on the back or other area of the document where the handwriting or typewriting is present. Whenever possible, all documents should be protected by placing them in cellophane or plastic envelopes. Shipment of evidence. So, there are two to consider. First is question documents may be submitted personally or left in previously described lockers at the laboratory entrance. Second one is such evidence sent to the laboratory by mail must be sent by certified or registered mail. If there is a massive amount of materials, it may be sent some other way, but the package must always be sealed. So, sa next one is shared documents where examination and decipherment of shared paper is involved. Great care must be taken to prevent any additional crumbling or breaking up part of the burned material. Normally, it should be placed on top of loose cotton in a box and delivered in person the laboratory. No matter how it is packaged, such material will be damaged if attempts are made to ship it by mail. So, other hand, question documents evidence in addition to handwritten and typewriting comparison and the decipherment of shared documents. Other related examinations can be conducted in laboratories such as restoration or decipherment of altered, or obliterated or erased writing. Comparison of check protectors and rubber stamps with question printing. Identification of embossed or indented writing or typing. Comparison of paper and commercial printed materials such as checks, coupons, receipt, and others. Physical matching of cut or turns paper of various types, problem relating to inks. So, the fourth one is preservation of latent fingerprint. So, the primary precaution in all cases in the prevention of adding fingerprints to evidence or of destroying those already present. Most fingerprints submitted will be on paper, glass, metal, or other smooth surface object. If articles containing latent must be picked up, touched as little as possible, and only in areas least likely to contain identifiable latents such as rough surface, while gloves or handkerchiefs must be used to pick up such exhibit. Any unnecessary contact should be avoided. Using cloth will frequently wipe off or smear any prints originally present unless great care is taken. Latent prints in glass, metal articles, and firearms should be placed on wood or heavy cardboard and fastened down with string or to prevent shifting and contact with other objects in transit. Where such evidence is to be examined frequently, a pegboard should be obtained on which wooden pegs can be moved and desired support exhibit and keep them from moving. Bottles and glasses may be placed vertically on a board and placed in the bottom of a box. The base of the bottle or glass can be surrounded with nails to hold it in place, and the top can be either inserted through a hole in a pieces of cardboard or held in position with a wooden board nailed to the container lid. So, papers and documents containing latent prints should be placed individually in a cellophane or manila envelopes, such as container can be sandwiched between two sheets of stiff cardboard, wrapped and placed in a box for mailing. The next one is, there are three types of fingerprints that can be found in the crime scene. So, the first type is latent fingerprint, patent fingerprint, and plastic fingerprints. So, latent fingerprint are made of the sweat and oil on the skin surface. This type of fingerprint is individually to the naked eye. This type of fingerprint is invisible to the naked eye and requires additional processing in order to be seen. This processing can include basic powder technique or the use of chemicals. Second one is patent fingerprint. Can be made by blood, grease, ink, or dirt. This type of fingerprint is easily visible to the human eye. Also, plastic fingerprints are their dimensional impression and can be made by pressing your finger in a fresh paint, wax, soap, or tar. Like patent fingerprint. Plastic fingerprints are easily be seen by the human eye and do not require additional processing for visibility purposes. So, that is the end of the topic of lesson 3.